How's everybody doing tonight? Getting it rolling. Let's see. Checking a few things. Let me go and check on my LinkedIn. I'll be able to struggle streaming, trying to get it together. Ready for the holidays. Okay, there it is there. Let's see there. Okay, find my. There it is. Oh, let's see mine. Okay, let's see. Checking on my LinkedIn real quick so we can get started. Give me one in the chat if you can hear me. Okay, I'll see me on LinkedIn. Let me make that bigger. Okay. Let's see. Welcome everybody over there. Let's see. Give me one in the chat if you can hear me. Get back on over. Check out Dr. Finesse. Appreciate you for joining me. You see it right there. We're going to do some cybersecurity, supply chain risk management. We all know risk management, especially supply chain together. It's a huge thing these days. And you're going to indeed and put third-party risk assessment. There's quite a few jobs out there, especially on the contract side. Definitely a smaller piece of cybersecurity, but definitely in there. If you got any questions, put them in the chat. We'll definitely get to them. Tech or cybersecurity, either one. We'll definitely check them out. I did not see my LinkedIn flow over, but I saw myself over there, so it is what it is. I'm always struggle streaming, so I'm gonna make sure it happens. I see Mr. Dr. Finesse over here. It's all good. So let's see. I'm trying to study for my CISP, so it's going okay. It's going okay. Let's see. Hump Days tomorrow, so happy Hump Days coming up. Happy 4th of July. We seeing it. It's going to get here any second, so let me take a quick drink of this, and we'll get started, and whoever flows in, whoever's not. Once again, they can definitely check it out on the replay. Salute to Before the Billions. Glad you can check us out for a minute. Definitely data engineering and doing some other things on his channel. So we're supposed to collab, but I've been saying that for a minute. So I'm gonna do a data engineer pipeline using cybersecurity, and we're gonna link up. Shout out to my man Blackjack Yak 54, checking him out on Tech G's channel. I saw him over there asking some very good questions. So I'm out in these cybersecurity streets. So I saw him on my man's Tech G's channel. Let's get started. Once again, you see it right there. Cybersecurity, supply chain risks and management for systems and organizations. NIST 800 161, revision 1. Most people know I love that NIST life. So I'll be checking on those NIST. Shout out to my man Chris. He might join us. He actually requested 161. And in here, they were talking about 151. So I had to go out there and check out that 151. So add to my compliance playlist. So if you're trying to get GRC, I got a 55-hour playlist. I got a lot of different compliances in there. As a senior guy, I like to be comfortable with the least high-level understanding on most compliances, and it's me in quite a few areas. NIST is definitely an area. FedRAMP is definitely an area. And IRS Pub 1075, which sits on top of NIST when you deal with IRS data and IRS data files and systems and hardening and getting ATO from IRS to operate computer system and actually get files from them. So they actually will give you an ATO to operate. So let's get rolling. Open. I really like this NIST 161 supply chain. These some things we're really not going to touch on, but they actually had different tables to help you with stuff: system information type and categorization, system security impact categorization, system operational status, role identification. So these are actually, we might look at a few templates to help you get started. And the G series, you get an example of a supply chain threat source agents, threat consideration, vulnerability consideration, consequence impact consideration, and likelihood and risk appetite and risk tolerance from a company standpoint. Now, I'm gonna be honest. The only thing companies I see with those are very large companies with a very big security team from that. Now, I've seen threat and vulnerability in smaller companies. I've actually done them from smaller companies, but not at the level that those templates are used. Let's see what my man Yusef. Glad he could join me. How you how you been, man? How was your weekend? It was pretty good. I usually just relax on the weekend. Once again, I've been studying for my CISP. Old guys be struggling trying to memorize stuff anymore. So that was pretty good. Okay, I've been doing the cybersecurity training. That's cool. That's cool. Yo, Caesar, that's cool. Hopefully your training is going well. And if you have any cybersecurity questions, just drop them in the chat. Me or somebody else in the chat, or a number of people will jump on there. You said, or I definitely see you in the GRC study hall. So which will be tomorrow at 7:30 if anybody else want to join us. So I try to go in there and give a couple hours of my week to the guys because they be putting in work. But once again, it's a great NIST documentation. They give you templates, and we'll look at a few of these templates, starting points, best practices and things for these documents that are really hard to get started. That's one thing I like about this. Anything you really think about in cybersecurity, they usually, once again, gives you some tables, charts, guidelines, best practices, and things to help you get started. So controls at level 1 and 2, that G9. I usually just do them all, to be honest, but a lot of people like to start for level 1, especially for small companies to get you started. Let's get rolling. Man, I'm ready for the holidays. I'm suffering. I'm tired. Let's get going, though. So once again, we're doing NIST, cybersecurity, supply chain risk management. If anybody remember the Casillas hack, right? That was one of the bigger supply chains. So supply chains are becoming more prevalent and easier ways for people to hack you, right? They don't have to hack you. They have to hack somebody in supply chain. So one of my favorite ones, if you Google this, it was Las Vegas about 10 years ago. Casino got hacked through a saltwater tank, right? So the computer system was hooked up to the network to go to the saltwater tank to make sure the fish didn't die. So of course that third party company didn't harden their network, so they hacked them to get on their network for the fish tank monitoring, then jumped into the casino and robbed it, right? So that's one of the most novel or different type of hacks you see. And two is HVACs for a lot of people were getting hacked through because you want the company to check on it, make sure nothing's bad, make sure no bad parts are going to happen, get alerts quicker before things broke. People were hacking a ton of people through HVACs. So anything at large companies, that's anything on the network, we're looking at. HVAC, salt water, ring camera alarm, anything on that network, we're checking, right? So let's see what my man Jupiter said. Well, let me hit this one. Organization concerned with risks associated with product service that may potentially contain malicious functionality, counterfeit, or vulnerability due to poor manufacturing and development practices within the supply chain. These risks are associated with enterprise decreased visibility into and understand how the technology they acquire is developed, integrated, deployed, process, procedure, standard practice used to ensure security, resilience, reliability, safety, integrity of their products and services. So when somebody used to your network, you just trust that they knew what they were doing, right? So people aren't trusting anymore because so many people, once again, the Casillas big hack got everybody up in arms. So that was one thing everybody started really, from a supply chain and third party, really start investigating and figure out what's going on. So let's keep going. Let's My man, Dr. Finesse. See what my man, Larry Chevron. Good evening, y'all. I was going through one of the professor videos. I appreciate you, Larry. If you got any questions, cybersecurity or tech, just put them in the chat. Are you doing videos on the dealership? Yeah, that's on there. The CDK. Yeah, that's on my USEF. I'll probably do one next week. I was trying to figure out the root access calls. I haven't seen that yet. The crazy thing is they had a video on YouTube I got where they were talking about their cybersecurity benefits of their product. It was last year. So yeah, that's in the pipeline. Yusuf. I probably do that this week, to be honest. Supply chain management hacking is becoming another. Oh, facts. I agree with that. Low hanging fruit is a great way to put it, because most vendors suck. I used to do a lot of the vendor assessment when I used to work for the state of Indiana Department of Revenue. So anything coming in there, I will look at, or anything we would bid on or RFP. So I would look at all the vendors' assessments, vendor questionnaires, and a lot of those vendors from billion-dollar companies I thought sucked. So yeah, I've seen a lot of architecture. I really enjoy doing that because you get to see a different architecture done from a lot of different companies. Love and content. Just want to stop in and say we're still watching. Keep educating about cybersecurity. I appreciate it. Ghost MKC. Let's see. The hack dealership still going on. No, I think they got it under control, Youssef. I think, I don't know. Now, I think they were still down. I had to go look about it. I guess one thing I didn't know, which I'm not surprised, is they handle like half the dealerships in the United States. It was a big percentage. It was around at least 40%. So a lot of dealerships really can't sell cars right now. They can take your money, but I don't think they can deliver the cars. Oh, I appreciate it. Let me know, man. Like I said, I used to do that for the state of Indiana. And just looking at that, and if you look at NIST or FedRAMP, that's a big security family now, supply chain and risk assessment. So that's real big, especially again since the Casillas hack. Appreciate you, Jim R, for joining. Howdy, PBO and the Cyber Mob. Appreciate that. Let's keep going. One thing about supply chain, you see it within there. So that's the cyber security chain risk management right there. That little thing. Culture and awareness is a set of shared values, practice, and goals and attitudes for the organization. Learning process influence individuals' enterprise attitudes and understanding to realize the importance of supply chain management and the consequences if you fail. The cool thing is, and I felt like when I left this big organization, we were finally getting through, was when people would order new software or bidding to get a new product or bidding to get a SaaS product or new service in the organization, they knew it had to go through a security review. They would reach out to us right now, right? And say security's got to be involved. They would send it to us and say, these are the 3 or 4 we're looking at it. Go through the security. If anybody's really lacking, right, we're going to automatically kick them out, right? So that's where that culture and awareness comes from, right? So security, supply chain really is well woven in all those, right? And 2 is, and it took me a long time to figure this out, is you want to be a contributor to a business, right? You want to be an enhancement to the business. You want to elevate to a business. A lot of times people talk about security like it's an obstruction of business, in the way of business, right? You want to turn it as an enabler of business, right? So I think that's a change that cybersecurity is still working on. I work for a lot of money being dumped in. Oh yeah, facts. Because if you get hacked, you're going to easily spend a lot of money, right? So that's it. And 2, from a NIST perspective, once again, the IRS, you got to get authority to operate. If they don't see you doing risk management at a high level, having a risk management board, looking at risk of software, doing vulnerability scans, you will not get authority to operate from the IRS, from FISMA, from FedRAMP, if you don't have that supply chain risk in there now, because they were just getting tore up in that realm. It's hard to write facts, man. Shout out to my man. Keep your head up. So now facts. Excel Pro, glad I joined. Shout out to Excel Pro. I always checking the brothers' videos out. I always giving me some good feedback. It could be just an emoji. So him giving you that or that, and I usually give him the sunglasses, but I appreciate that engagement from my man Excel Pro. I always watching my videos. I always give me a little comment, even if it's just emoji. PBO appreciates it. Let's see. You said PBO supply chain attacks might hurt worldwide now, just in the facts, not just in the United States. Something I learned how hackers gain access that they need to fix faster, longer, leaks happen, worse, it hurts reputation. No, facts. No, you're right, And that's one thing I need to do. Shout out to the Black Brain Trust and other people with getting a more international feel, right? Getting more of that. And two is from that GDPR. PIPA's Canada. There's a lot of worldwide privacy laws that are coming in play if you're an international company. So yeah, I definitely got to start trying to get that international lens yourself. You're 100% right there. Customers' data right. It may ways to stop hacks. There's ways. Shout out to my man. Shout out before the billion. So let's keep going. We rolling. And here, this is the reduced visibility. So this is your stuff. We got our suppliers, external system integrator. Shout out to my man Gabe with the ICT and OT suppliers, right? But then they have suppliers. The suppliers have external suppliers, external system providers. Then they have suppliers. So you're right here with your enterprise seeing this, but there's other suppliers back here, right, that you have no visibility in, you don't realize, or you don't see, right? So one thing that is becoming more apparent to me when I work for a big company is your legal documentation here, or your DPA, data process agreement. Your security requirements has to flow down to your external system service providers and their suppliers. So if this vendor supplier gets hacked, it goes down to their sub providers. So if their sub providers get you hacked, you have legal recourse to sue your supplier and their sub suppliers, right, to get your money and to become whole. Right? So that's where the legal part come in, and I'm really just getting used to that. And I've been in this game a long time, and I never thought I'd be in a room with lawyers all day, in past jobs when I worked at the big state. Just being rooms with lawyers, I thought was different, but they call them flow downs and carve outs. So your legal department makes sure if this vendor right here gets you hacked, their suppliers will be held responsible. And you can get money from them, caps and indemnifications and refunds and credits. But your legal paperwork has to be right up front to be able to get visibility on the back end and get compensated for it. Right. So that's part of cybersecurity, C-suite and stuff. So key takeaways to that: the supply chain relies on global distributed interconnected supply chain ecosystem that consists of public and private sectors. Example, acquirers, suppliers, developers, system integrators, external system service providers, and other ICT, OT related service providers. Right. So what's your visibility into that supply chain? Who's responsible for that supply chain? If somebody in the lower parts of that get you hacked, are there any recourse for you legally? Are they going to pay your fines? Are they going to pay your credit monitoring? Once again, you need to make sure you cover from a legal perspective, which works in tandem with cybersecurity, GRC, and privacy. Supply chain products and services. Products and services that enterprise rely on the supply chain for include provision of system components, open source, custom software, operational system services, hosting services, and performing system service roles. The big part of that I think a lot of people are missing or try to take advantage of it unfairly is cloud providers, your CSP, cloud service providers, being AWS, Azure, Google, Rackspace, Oracle has their own cloud. So they're in your supply chain. So if they get you hacked, right, Azure got hacked by a nation state, and all the government people that were in there lost a lot of emails. So who's responsible for that? Who's going to indemnify you for that? All right. Azure prints money, right? So I'm sure they're illegal and you're illegal get together, right? So I'm sure there was some compensation from Azure. I'm sure there was a lot of government credits that were handed out. So government probably got free cloud services probably for a couple of years for that. Let's keep rolling. Supply chain benefits and risk. The system offer benefits such as cost savings, interoperability, rapid innovation, product features, ability to choose between competing vendors. That's one thing people do, especially from the government standpoint. They want to have presence in AWS, Azure, Google, and Oracle. Why? You get cheaper rates. You can play them off each other. And if one of them getting taken out by a nation state, if you multi-cloud, you should be able to roll over to another cloud and continue to operate. Now, that's a lot harder than it sounds, right? Because a lot of that stuff is not easier. But you do want to be multi-cloud if you're the government, right? Because if someone takes out your operation, you want to be able to spin up into another cloud. The cool thing is those clouds are in different regions in the United States and around the world. So to take AWS out in the United States, okay, AWS is in Africa. I think it's in Poland. They had data centers around the world. I did a video of that. So they're really hard to take out, right? That's one of the benefits. Cybersecurity chain risk management, as described in the document, is a systematic process that aims to help enterprise management cybersecurity risks throughout the supply chain. Enterprise should identify and adopt tailored practices described. The scope encompasses a wide array of stakeholders, groups that include information security, privacy, system developers, procurement, legal, like we just talked about, HR. All of that goes into your risk, right? So they all have to work together, right? That's onboarding, offboarding, your development staff, your cloud vendor, privacy. All of that works together when you talk about doing supply chain risk. That's what makes it so hard to keep all of those safe. B2B sounds like you caught. Shout out to Upgrading Jeff. These I appreciate might be hard to detect some supply chain attack with code repository being exploited with all facts, API security, facts, all of that. And he's correct. And we probably touch on different pieces of that coming up. They were in the documents because a lot of times, like you said, API, you just really calling the API and interacting with that service. But from a risk assessment, you got to ask, where is your service hosted? Most people know I do federal work. Federal work, all your data has to stay inside CONUS. So my first question is, where's your data center? Is my data staying in CONUS? But like Mike said, okay, it's in the United States, it's still gonna get hacked, but that's one small. What type of encryption you do? What database is it in? Right? Am I encrypted at rest and in transit? Is it FIPS 140-3 encryption? Meaning that encryption was looked at by the government and it's done properly, right? All that's part of your assessment. But he's right. The supply chain is now so deep because once again, we're doing APIs, we're doing web service calls, we're doing WebSocket calls. So we're just calling something, sending something, and they're sending us a reply. It could be XML, it could be JSON, but what's behind it that gave you that? What database, what web server, what's app server? Are you using KMS keys? Is it Azure? How is protecting you? And that's part of your assessment of supply chain, even at the high level. You at least want to do a high level check so you're not to be considered to be negligent if you ever got hacked. But Mike B's right on point with that. So my man Jim R said, I learned on the cyber ops engineering architecture side and less on the audit and compliance side. GRC has always been bastardized stepchild, but through the third-party risk assessment and what we cybersecurity are really driving GRC forward. It is, I guess, Jim, and I need you and Mike B to chime in on this. I've only seen large and sophisticated companies, Jim, doing this type of work. So you're talking about the top of the tip of the spear. All the mid-sized and smaller companies trying to do all this data poorly. They're not doing any of that, Jim, for what I see. Because I know when I do risk assessment and ask those questions, they seem to be really lacking on that. I need everybody to chime in on that. I just don't see that at the mid, especially small size companies not doing any of that at all. So from a cloud standpoint, it becomes regional risk. You won't know exactly what all you know is. No, facts, Jim. Facts. So, but yeah, I just don't see that done at a maturity level, Jim, just in the bigger companies, right? When I worked at a very large state client, or I worked at DOD, or I worked at a large insurance company, I've seen that done. But anything that was smaller than Fortune 1000, you're correct. I'm stuttering, Mike B. All the SOC 2 reports I thought was poorly done, Mike. The reason why, and I'm gonna drop the link in a minute, Mike, if you want to come up, you too, Jim Morris. The SOC 2 is done by an accounting firm. The agreement between the accounting firm and client, since the client's playing the accounting firm, I just always seen shoddy work. Most SOC 2s is missing something because they suck at it. A lot of times they don't have their database even in a SOC 2 because it sucks. So I said, what database are you using? Okay, is it encryption at rest? Is it TDD, transparent encryption, if it's Microsoft? So I always been a SOC 2 hater on that, Mike V. I need you to chime in. Maybe it's just a couple ones I've done. I've probably done 20. I just always see SOC 2 done by an accounting firm. I just don't think they have the chops for cybersecurity, because SOC 2s are usually done by accounting. I don't know if I'm hating on accounting firms. Chime in on that, Mike. Chime in on that, GMR. What's your thoughts on that? I just never got a warm and fuzzy. And every time I look at one, it seems something like they purposely leave stuff off that people wouldn't ask for unless you have that. Like Mike V said, I've been a developer. I've been a DBA. So there's certain things I looked at from that knowledge that I don't think the average person would look for. See, Jim R, yes and no, they're talking about it. They're buying products, of course. 20 years later, clients are still trying to IT access. Facts, man, or systems. Yeah, so if you don't know you got it from an IT assessment, it's hard to do a security assessment if you don't know what you have. So let's keep rolling. So one of my pet peeves. So once again, we did this on the, there you see it, NIST 800-39, the communication between the assets, monitor, and respond. We just saw my man Jim R talking about assets, all right? So framework risk establishes the context for risk-based decisions in the current state of enterprise. Assess the risk, review and interpret critical and threat vulnerabilities, likelihoods, impact. Respond to the risk, select, tailor, and implement mitigation controls. Monitor risk exposure and effectiveness of mitigating the risk on an ongoing basis, including tracking and changes to the information and supply chain. So the big cool thing is assessing risk. It's a little easier because now you get your Rapid7 out, your Nexus scanner out, your QualSys scan out. You can throw your vulnerability scan in there, your compliance scanner, or it'll give you some threats, some vulnerabilities. It'll actually give you risk coming out of there. Now you have to tailor it. I see a lot of people struggle with that. And two, how do you monitor the risk? I think once again with the tooling, you can monitor and see if you're patching stuff, fixing stuff, putting it on the schedule, putting it on a poem, and see if you're hitting those milestones by patching your database, handling your patch Tuesday from Windows, making sure you're getting all that patched up in a timely fashion. I think it's a little easier with the tooling these days. So I think that definitely hit. Let's see what's going on. You still yes and no? See threats. We just talked about the other side threats: malware, counterfeit, industrial espionage, supply chain disruption, vulnerabilities, interdependencies in the supply chain, primary supplier levels, vulnerability in information systems. We just got to talk about Rapid7 and QualSys, unpatched systems. Right, so you got your vulnerabilities and your threat. What's going to take advantage of those vulnerabilities? The likelihood and probability of those. We talked about that. When you do a vulnerability scan, your CVE is going to give you the score that tells you what risk level that is. If it's a 10, attacking a wild, you're toast. If it's 1, right, not very not being taken advantage of. So you can get a lot of those scores and probability attack when you do those scans. The impact of the degree of harm to the mission or business, loss to customers and public trust due to data disclosure, loss of classified information resulting in a compromise of national security, production of delay due to supply chain disruption, loss of intellectual property due to data exfiltration, cybersecurity risk throughout the supply chain, right? So once you classify your data, get your vulnerability scan in, get your compliance scan in, get your risk assessment in, you can come up with a good program for your company. Right. I just don't see that done a lot in real life. Right. And working with people, when people calling me, asking me questions, I just don't see that done a lot. So once again, everybody chime in and let me know your thoughts on that. We saw this too, right? The strategic risk coming from the enterprise level down to mission and operational level and going back the other way, right? So at the enterprise, shout out to Jim R. He was talking about his enterprise risk management, going on with some best practices to put in at the enterprise level that flows down to the supervisor level that operations can look up to and figure out from an enterprise level the way things should be done. Usually I see stuff done in stovepipe and best practices for each individual division or agency or even technology stack, right? But nothing at the enterprise level to show focus and direct the organization in a whole and direction of where they need to go to. CIO level, CISO level, right? And even CEO level, right? What is the appetite of the organization? So that's a lot of things, times you don't see stuff at that level. Oh, let me get over here. Help if I get on the right screen. And once again, at those levels, strategy, implementation, policies, and procedure. High level. Mid-level, once again, strategies, policies, and implementation plans. Then at the operational level, cyber, supply chain, risk management plans, right? And we'll look at some few at a high level and see what that is from an operational standpoint. Once again, you see enterprise mission right there, strategy, implementation plan, enterprise policy, and once again at the business level and the division, and once again at the operational level. So that's just a flow of what that should look like and how it should go. So the business case, we hit these at a super high level. What's the business case? Provides enterprise with a number of benefits, such as understanding critical system, reduce the likelihood of supply chain compromise, operation and enterprise efficiency, cyber risk in the supply chain, the potential of harm or compromise arising from a relationship with suppliers, their supply chain and supplier products and services, multi-level, multi-discipline, coming from the 839. I did a video on that, multi-level risk, execution and continuous improvement of supply chain risk management activities, mission and business process levels. Each level contains stakeholders from multiple disciplines, information security, procurement, enterprise risk management, engineering. If somebody asks me, how do I know when to do a risk assessment? How do I know when to do an assessment? Is procurement. As soon as you buy something, before it hits your network, hopefully you did a risk assessment before you bought it. But if you bought it and you bring it in, is what's the risk? How do we secure it? How do we secure it? How to, once again, encryption that in transit and at rest? What's the best way to put the product? And at risk, what part of the network should we put that product in? Right. Sometimes we want to put it in a product in a certain part of the network, but it's too risky. Right. It's in with the classified data, but it doesn't meet that security level. Right. So we need to put it on another part of the network and maybe not put certain data in there till that company brings it up to our current risk level. But hopefully you found out all that before you bought it, right? That's part of the assessment. But I've seen it done both ways. Dedicated office known as the PMO may support enterprise risk by providing support products, policy templates, vendor risk assessment as well. And Mike put that up. Part of that is the SOC 2 Type 2. I'm more of a FedRAMP ATO, hopefully operation, where you get done a 3PO, IRS, ATO. So I'm more, if I have more affinity to the ATO's authority to operate from government oversight. HIPAA, which is weak, but IRS, FISMA, FedRAMP, those type of government entities, I think do a better job at it. Life cycle process activities should be integrated and executed through the enterprise life cycle process. For example, in a system, cybersecurity chain risk can do to materialize during operations and maintenance phase. Organizations should ensure the appropriate activities are in place to assess, respond, and monitor cybersecurity supply chain risk on a continuous basis. So the one thing we talk about too is it should be done annually, all right? Especially if they've done a big upgrade, they've done a big feature, you should do a security assessment to make sure it's still at the same level it's not. And two, a lot of times, especially companies with large customer space, especially Fed-based, they really take that input and put it in action, right? Because if something's found and they lose their ATO, right, they'll lose billions of dollars. So they really take those input. And a lot of times they give you features and let you do risk assessment before they actually put them into the main product, which is cool. Let's see. The risk assessment done before procurement. After, yeah, I agree, but I've seen it done. You're right, but I've seen it done the other way. I've had presidents tell me, get it through, high tire, make it work. So, but no, correct. And Mike's correct. When we do an RFP, which is a request for proposal, RFI, request for inquiry, we're getting all that information, like you said, at the architectural level before it's even bought, right? So, and two, is a lot of times is, especially for a large, they're competing with other vendors, and we might do oral. They might have to give us an oral presentation on their product, and part of the oral presentation is what's your security. Like Mike said, before we even bought it, we looked at your architectural diagrams. We asked you where encryption at. If you're in AWS or Azure, what does that look like, right? So Mike is 100% correct. We would love to do it before procurement, but a lot of times too is when I come in, Mike come in, and Jim come in. A lot of times there's technical debt, so I have to do risk assessment to see what level is our current software running at to see what the risk is running at. But Mike's 100% correct. You would hope you would do it before you bought it, which is procurement. Facts. Oh, God. Let's see. CEO, CTO buys and said, Mike, it's secure. Fact, make it secure. Facts, man. We need that. We need this software. Like, dude. So, but I've been there. And the cool thing though, a lot of times is, and companies usually buy it's off is, let me help you make your product FedRAMP worthy or IRS compliant, that you could sell it to other states and other companies with that as a selling point. So that's usually how I try to sell. And most companies buy into that, right? So let me do an assessment of you. Let me help you. Let's do this checklist, right? So let me help you get your product in other state agency or other federal agencies. So a lot of times they work with you for that reason. Sorry about that. Mike said it right there. Plan procurement, service risk assessment, supplier risk assessment, product risk assessment. Define or develop requirements. So like Mike said right there, perform market analysis, solicit bids, and complete procurement. Right, pre-deployment risk assessment, research product and operations. So that's the procurement process. And that's something that's really jumping off probably the last 4 or 5 years for me is procurement and contract process. Security needs to be in that process, like Mike said. You want to do all that stuff before you buy it. You want to make sure it meets your security requirements from an architectural level, from a GRC level, from a GDPR, CCPA privacy level, right? So all those stuff comes into play, especially if you're talking about a national company or a very large company. They're dipping their toes in all those arenas. So it's always interesting on that piece. So once again, plan procurement, define or develop requirements, perform a market analysis, and solicit bids and complete procurement. All right. So, and Mike brought that up right there. The risk assessment done before procurement at the architectural level. That's probably 95% correct, right? But once again, a lot of company has technical debt. I come in a lot of times and they already have software and they never done a risk assessment over it, right? So you see that a lot. But no, in the perfect world, Mike is 100% correct. The NIST 150, which I need to go look at the 150, describe key practices for establishing, participating, in sharing a relationship, establish information sharing goals and objectives which support business process and security policies, identify existing external sources of it, specify the scope of information sharing activities, establish information sharing rules, join and participate in information sharing efforts, actively seek to enrich indicators to provide additional context, use secure automated workflows to publish, consume, and analyze upon that, proactively establishing sharing agreements, protect security and privacy of sensitive information. So what information are you sharing with your suppliers? What's the agreement between you and their? The big deal I always look for is, can you resell my data? The answer is no, right? So I see a lot of stuff, especially when you go through click-through stuff online, right? So what does that mean, right? Two is, are you using my data to calculate something? You're going to roll it up? Then I want my detailed data deleted. If you already rolled it up in the calculation, you don't need it anymore. Why should you keep it, right? So what's the retention of that data? All right. Once again, you should have sharing agreements with your suppliers. And a lot of times, too, even a large company, I have sharing agreements between, good point, sharing agreements with that as well, but between divisions. You know, I worked at Fortune 500 companies. The divisions are big. They're companies within themselves. Even though it's company data, each division is kind of using it differently. So we need to understand the life cycle of that data privacy, data usage, and from data security. A lot of times you have stovepipe systems inside a company. They take it from one database and put it into another database, right? It might be a Redshift more as a data warehousing. It could be a NoSQL database. It could be a relational database. Each division had their own way of doing data, right? So you want to get data agreements sometime in large companies, even between those divisions. What's up, Double R Squared? Hope you're doing well. How do you go about performing risk assessment on large language models and GI agents in this step? I'm gonna have to do a video on that, Mike. We were actually discussing that. NIST does have an AI risk model in their NIST special publication. It's not CSF. CSF was calling it out, but they do have their own language models, especially when you're talking about generative AI, right? That's definitely a different beast. Somebody actually asked me, I guess I'll do a video on that. I don't really do a ton of AI. And the companies I work for, a lot of times, they would say, if it's generative AI, you got to send it to the AI committee, right? But that is a good point. How do we do a risk assessment? But once again, NIST does have and I look it up, I think they do have their NIST special publication for doing risk assessment on generative AI. I just don't do that in real life. So once again, it's the performance measures. You get your goals and objective definition. We just looked at it above. Get your policy guidelines and procedures. How do you implement them? At the level of implementation, how do you get your results, effectiveness, and efficiency? Once again, get your business and mission impact. Then it's always iterative, right? And this is part of continuous monitoring, which is part of that is, are you getting better? What's your risk assessment? When you do your vulnerability scans, are you missing stuff in your review that you need to add a different question to or more detail? A lot of bigger companies do full questionnaires. Like Mike said, you get your SOC 2 type 2 in there, say you good. So, and we just talked about all these and we just hit the acquisition. You should do your reviews before it. Information sharing. Enterprise will gain access to information critical to understanding and mitigating cybersecurity risks throughout the supply chain. Awareness and training. What are your key practices? What are your capabilities implementing measures? Dedicated, and what's your dedicated resource? Where possible and applicable, enterprise should commit dedicated funds for the supply chain risk management. The benefit of doing so is include facilitate strategic and goal-oriented planning, driving accountability, stakeholders. Once I worked at large companies, so they were using their Archer as part of that. Put all your risk chain in there, linked them up, right? So you have your systems, like my man Jim was saying. You have your assets, you have your assessments on your assets, you have your policies. You have your policies, exceptions. Then how are you monitoring that as process, right? Your POAM. So when you have gaps, when you're going to get them fixed, right? So they're going to be on your risk side and your assessment side and your privacy side, right? So how are you handling that and how are you linking all those together? And two is those are the NIST families. And these are one of the NIST families. They're adding the supply chain to it. So from your assess enforcement, ensure that the information system and the supply chain have appropriate access information mechanisms in place. This could include both physical and logical asset mechanisms. Then the subfamily is assess enforcement, revocation of the assess authorization. Prompt revocation is critical to ensure suppliers, developers, system integrators, and external system providers and other ICOT related services who no longer require access or abuse or violates access privileges are not able to access. So if somebody hacked your keys and your keys are used in your supply chain or their keys are hacked and you need to cut off access, can you do that with a click of a button? Do you have SOAR, right, which is security orchestrated reports and actions to take away your rights, generate new keys, shut off systems, shut down whole VMs, shut down whole parts of network? Can you do that in a very, I guess, quick and abrupt and expedient way? Because a lot of times when you get hacked, you need to make moves quick, right? So once again, access enforcement, control, release. Information about supply chains should be controlled for release between enterprise parties. Information may be exchanged between enterprise and its suppliers, developer, integrators related to service providers. The control release of information protects against risks associated with disclosure, right? So, in two, if somebody got hacked, sometimes you have federal requirements. Like the IRS, once you think you know you have data leakage or a breach, you got 24 hours to let the IRS know. Not if you got breached, if you think you got breached. And if you found to violate that, you could get a big fine, right? So part of that information sharing, release and control information, revocation of access authorization, right? From data linkage to breach. How do you make that happen? So the cool thing is, I don't think I've ever seen this. They take the whole 20 families inside this, they put it on the supply chain, and what does those control mean from the supply chain? And I always do it from internal. We're doing IRS work or HIPAA work. I never thought about it from the supply chain work. Now I think about it because I do assessments for that, like Mike said, the RACI. Two is threat modeling. You could do the STRIDE or the PASTA method for threat modeling, right? All of that kind of plays into your assessment too. So let's keep rolling. I think I'm almost done. Well, hell, it's been an hour. So I'll drop the link if anybody wants to come up. Let's see. Drop the link if anybody wants to come up. But big third party risk. If you go out to Indeed, that's hot. Contracting. One thing I tell a lot of young guys, that's the way to get in cybersecurity from the contracting side, actually, right? Because big companies, they have contracting, like Mike said, procurement, right? Procurement's in there. So from a procurement standpoint, you would have to do a risk assessment, questionnaires, all of that becomes involved. Let me see what my man Larry said. I work in Fed acquisition, been a struggle between security being needed at the system level where they develop data solutions, but the enterprise level is slow as implementing top. Yeah, fact. Especially if you in the Fed. The Fed's always notoriously slow. Long story short, Larry, I think I worked for DoD for 10 years. But hell, that's been about 10 years ago. No, probably about 15 years ago since I worked for DoD. But yeah, that's the thing, especially at the Fed space. It seems to always get pushed from the bottom up, even though it should come top down. The reason why is the Fed is excellent, but it takes them a lot of time to get there with the documentation, the acquisition. Sometimes you got to get stuff from OMB. You got to get executive guidance, right? So all that part adds into it. But you're 100% correct. Been struggling between the system level, that all facts, internal level slow. And two is the Fed, a lot of times they want stuff come from NIST or the president almost. They want executive order. So a lot of times you're right, you come in. I used to work for DFAS, which is DOD Finance Division. But I mean, they had about 5,000 people in it, 3,000 or 4,000 people. And that was a small agency, but once again, it comes down from top down and to get those guys. But Larry, that's actually normal. Let's see what Jim R said. Doing some for my head, but which should drive the risk assessment. No, facts. Now you're 100% correct in there. I'm with you, Larry. I think a lot of I think people setting up working groups, committees. I've seen a lot of committees set up, making sure in the committee they're looking at it. All right. A lot of times I see those committees, little larger companies, you get cybersecurity, you get privacy, you get legal, and you get procurement in there, right? And I think that's what the bigger companies are being done. A couple of people reached out, Jim, and asked me that question. I'm like, I have a theoretical aspect. I haven't done that in real life yet. so that's my 2 cents on that. Let's get anybody want to come up. I dropped the link there. I'm going to come. Okay, that's cool. B2B, I hold tight. Let's see. Let me check on my LinkedIn. Waiting for my man B2B to come up. Oh, there it is. Okay. My man Therese over here. Gotta figure out why my LinkedIn is not flowing over to my YouTube. I need to work on that. But shout out to people on LinkedIn for joining me. Much more a little livelier on YouTube. I apologize. Working on my LinkedIn skills. So, but let's see. But let's while B2B is coming up, let me grab the link and look at a couple of those templates I thought were interesting. Let's switch over. Let's make that a little bigger. Where is the? I could do that here. Let's see. Let's look at some of the templates. While my man B2B's coming up, he took that few of these. Here's the templates there. Telecommunication, industrial espionage, malicious code. That scenario 2 is real big. Sometimes prohibited telecom for big companies, where you're getting your equipment from. Are you getting it from certain parts of China? So that kind of shows you a background of counterfeit. They tell you the environment. They tell you the threat. Then they tell you the scenario. Then they tell you the mitigation strategy right here. Require developers to perform security testing. Let me get my man B2B up here. What's up, B2B? Give me one second. Give me one second. You see the mitigation tell your developers design information systems, employ diversity requirements for your equipment. Step 3.2, threat source, vulnerability, threat event, threat outcome, your impact. Now, I've done this for smaller companies, but I usually just have what my threat source is, some high level vulnerabilities. I don't do the likelihood. I don't do the cost. I tell you the risk. Then I have the CISO approve it. Go ahead, B2B. Chime on in.
How you doing, PBO? Can you hear me well?
Yeah, I can. You Crystal, man. You know you got the professional setup. I'm over here struggle streaming, man.
Oh man, I wish it was some more to it. I'm trying to expand with the YouTube equipment. But yeah, as far as I know, earlier in the stream you were talking about how you wanted to we're doing the collaboration about security and data analytics and engineering. So
Facts.
I think that's going to be a really good value packed stream. But as far as some of the slides, can you go back to there
Yeah.
was a slide that you showed with the graph.
Okay. Let me get back over there. Let's see. Okay, I'm here. Let me.
Oh, what were you just showing?
I was showing let me go back. I was actually showing this. Actually, is the 161 document, which is different. This is actually the document where I pulled a lot of those graphs out. To
Hmm.
condense them because this is 300 pages. so,
Right. Yeah, the
so
data visualization, and that goes right into it because
yeah,
makes it so that way you can actually absorb some of the information.
yeah, yeah.
What
So,
was it said something about the cost of
oh yeah, right here,
mitigating these risks. Yeah.
right there. Because remember, if you remember when we were doing the Ticketmaster, remember it was 500 million rows times $100 was 50 billion, right? So you
Hmm.
can there's different ways to come up with costs, but there they did estimated mitigating costs. So I'm sure potential increased acceptance test security requirements. So I guess they're putting some dollars on time it was to mitigate the control from this telecommunication. That was the scenario on this one.
Hmm.
Telecommunication counterfeit. So if you got caught with counterfeit, I guess how would you mitigate that? So they kind of walk through that at a high level.
Okay. PBO, I will tell you this is that after everything going on right now, I am actually trying to learn more about cybersecurity as another option.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
To get into cybersecurity and then also um see how my current skill set aligns. Like when we're talking about data analytics and data engineering, data science, how we can use those types of the skill sets in order to mitigate these risks and protect our data. I mean, data is pretty much the backbone of a lot of the companies.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Without it, without you setting in cybersecurity measures in place,
mm-hmm,
these companies will go bankrupt
mm-hmm,
because especially with large companies. I remember you brought up in a previous stream, you might have brought it up in this stream as well, talking about HIPAA
mm-hmm,
and how expensive that data is if they are found negligent.
mm-hmm. It's crazy expensive. $1,000
Yeah.
a record, depending if you found negligent. For HIPAA,
Hmm.
it's crazy.
So let's say this, right? Let's say somebody hacks into their account and they get access to all those records. How would they know how many records they accessed? Or is it just every record that was in the database they had access to? So now you owe, however many millions of dollars.
Now, what you should do is, and you brought up and we mentioned it, I think offline. So let me know if you may cut up. When you do Splunk or any of those type logging, you logging what records they touch, right? So if somebody
Mhm.
does a select star and touches every record, meaning they try to steal a whole database, you can see select star inside Splunk. Now it might not show you every record they touch, but if you do select star at this particular time and day, you can go back to the database to see how many records were at that time of day, right? So then you can kind of say, okay, I believe they stole all the records, right? So, or
Mhm.
because usually, of course, we talking about if you're doing some kind of SQL injection, or somebody does, if somebody exports a whole database or a whole table, right? You can see that inside Splunk because that's a privilege statement. So you should be logging all those privilege statements. So if somebody exports in Oracle, we call it a table space, right? You can have multiple tables in the table space. So if you see the bad guy export a whole table space, right? You know what tables are in that table space, and you can go back and figure out directly what records got hacked. So from Splunk, logging, Elk Cache, CloudWatch, if you're in AWS, you can kind of figure out from that perspective what records they stolen or what records they touched. Let me get this question real quick.
Mhm.
Hey, Prof, question. If a company has been breached before, what kind of due diligence should be done before onboarding that vendor? Please share 5 recommendations and risk. Okay, so I was thinking if the company's been breached, you saying if the company you've been breaching, they're going to be a third party vendor. Mike B brought up what is their SOC 2 report? Usually, if they've been breached in their big company, one of the big guys came out, one of the big four, Mandiant, they should have a cleaner bill of health attestation from whatever big vendor came out and did that forensic analysis for them. Because if that vendor gave them a forensic clean bill of health, if they're wrong, we're going to sue you because we have your attestation, right? So I would look at that. You should do your due diligence because I don't trust those big companies. What are you doing? What have you put in place? What type of encryption? Did you move to the cloud? What mitigation controls did you put in from that rack? Once again, that attestation is to say how they hacked you. Was it bleed? Was it what? Was it cozy bear? So they would those things to tell you how that attack happened. So they should show you mitigation controls to be able to block that. So those are 4 or 5 things. Once I would get an attestation from whatever that being Microsoft Azure, whatever big four vendor gave them a clean bill of health that should have showed them what caused them to get hacked, gave them the mitigation to fix it. I need that documentation saying there you good. I'm gonna try to wrap that around our legal documentation. So if that's false and they get hacked the same way, we suing whatever vendor gave you clean bill of health. Chime in on that if you want to, B2B, if you got anything on that.
I wanted to kind of hint on,
Mm.
has something like this actually happened recently where a company had to sue one of these like third party security risk companies like that handle, like, let's say this right, has anybody had to sue like a Mandiant or any of these other kind of companies that try to mitigate risks?
I've never seen it. If it happened, you won't hear about it.
Okay.
What happened if Mandiant's so big and Microsoft big, if they miss something, they got cyber insurance and a whole bunch of money, so they would just cover it. So I'm sure inside those two big companies, they have some cyber insurance to say if we mess up and you get hacked again from the same way. So I'm sure there's some agreement in there.
Hmm.
Let me let my man Jim R. What's up, Jim R? You always giving great insight, man. I'm glad you joined us tonight. Oh, can you hear me, Jim R? Jim R, can you hear me? I don't think you can hear me, B2B.
I think he may need to switch his
Yeah,
microphone. Yeah.
yes. Jim R, you might have to switch your microphone. That happens every now and then. I'm so
Okay.
used to doing it now. Go ahead, while he's coming up. I'm about
But
to.
yeah, man, I just have, really, I have mostly questions because I'm trying to just learn
Hey,
about
whatever
this
you.
because I seen. So I saw a NIST on some of the requirements for some of these jobs I was looking into for cybersecurity.
Facts, man. Get that NIST. So I help you. Because
Okay.
NIST, anytime you're doing federal work, most of them's gonna be NIST. The thing that's kind of replacing this, looking CMC, that's really a stripped down version of NIST, but NIST is still super popular. I've done NIST for 20 years. Go ahead, B2B.
I guess it may sound like a stupid question, but
No,
if you
man.
were to say, how long would it take for you to know enough to be dangerous as far as like learning NIST? Like, if you were to say, how many months would it take for you to like learn that skill set?
You got to switch your it was echo. You probably have to switch your input and output, Jim. It's a little weird. Me and B2B was talking about that. We had to do that. Really, because you sell yourself short. The reason why is I start off as a programmer, B2B. That's data engineering. So you understand from DevOps and application security what is input, what is validation, what is SQL injection. You know how to do those things.
Yes.
You know what JDBC is. There's a whole
Mhm.
application security section that people are not aware of that a lot of companies do. So that you can use that as your foray into NIST.
Okay.
Right. So I can help you do that. My GRC family who's in it, they keep telling me to hurry up and do my course. but go ahead. So we can talk about that. You know, we chat offline. So and I'll send you some stuff on application security with NIST, and that could be your foray in there because you know what that is. Most people
Right.
don't know what those are, right? So
Mhm.
that could be a once again a foray in, and most people realize the quickest way the quickest way hacker gets in is through a website. You done
Yep.
websites, you know what databases are, you know what selects are, so you understand that from an operational standpoint. You just need to put the security on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, see
Yeah, because I remember when I used to work in information security, they were telling me so many different things about like SQL injection, and
man,
they also talking about you could put things into the
cross-site scripting.
URL.
Yeah,
Yep,
cross-site scripting, cross-site
that's what.
forgery. See, you know what that is, B2B. You
Man in
had
the
it
middle
again.
attacks and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
you
Yeah.
had it again. Hey, Jim R, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, chime
Yes,
in.
sir.
My fault, B2B. Let Jim come in. Jim, I done seen you come in, giving great input.
No, it's funny, some of the documents you want from third parties, obviously you want a SOC 2, type 2, et
I hate
cetera, et
SOC 2.
cetera.
I'm interrupting you. I hate SOC 2. I don't trust him.
Ye-
Keep going.
Yeah, I don't either, right? IBM gave me a SOC 2 type 2. I said, after I get done wiping my ass, you'll show that you can actually secure my data.
Yeah. But the sad part of that, Jim, though, is 95 people accept them with no questions asked. So that's why people get it.
Well, we before it's I'd have like a few dozen systems or whatnot, so it was easy for you to do your due diligence, and then it's like, hey, Syscat, run this, right? I want to see some evidence. I want you to put a boundary. Don't just say it's hosted here in IBM land somewhere. Give me the servers it's on and run Syscat on the servers, and at least give me some evidence where I got a little bit more assurance. But you've got so many different things. It really becomes a value, right? If I've got low value data on different systems, no big deal. But if I've got lots of stuff on there, like a Salesforce, or major systems with lots and lots of privacy implications, then I do a lot more work beyond that.
Let me chime in on top of you, Jim. I'm gonna interrupt you.
Sure.
He just says scope of work without saying scope of work. So when he says high value or IRS data or FISMA data, that's your scope of work. If you got 4,000 VMs, you're not gonna look them out.
Well,
what's your most critical, and that's gonna give you your scope of work. Go ahead, Jim.
Absolutely. And I went to a bank and I was there for about 20 months, and they were very immature, and they'd grown from like 6 branches to 74 within a 10-year period, just through organic growth and mergers and acquisitions. And they were privately held, so it's like, well, I don't have to comply with anything. And it's like all of a sudden they hit a certain dollar threshold, and FDIC was all over them. So my job, I went in there and said, okay, I got to protect data, right? what are we doing? Oh, best practices or some other nonsense, right? Some things would be done well, others weren't. So it's like, I can't protect what I can't classify. So let's classify those things. Let's assign a value. Let's assign owners, all of these other things. Then we could do it, right? Once we found out what it is, right? Hey, is this regulated data? You know, okay, you had to put these controls in place, right? Then if I dealt with my third parties, right, I didn't care if they said, hey, here's my, you know, SOC 1 or SOC 2, or, you know, I didn't care, right? These are my questions I got to ask. Do you have these things in place? So it takes a little bit more time. And a lot of times when you're asking those questions and you're getting the feedback, you know when you're talking to someone who's competent, that's doing the right things, right? And if you're asking people the questions and it's like, you know, they're just like, oh, let me throw an answer out there. You ask for verification, or can you show me, etc. But there's so many systems out there right now, you know, throughout the supply chain and with third parties, that it really becomes of what is the data and what's the value of these systems. Other than that, you know, it's that defines how much time I can spend with it, right? If we're gonna get owned on something because it's, you know, because they're doing some printing function for some clients, but it's all, you know, it's all masked data, right? So they don't see accounts or anything like that. Then that might be a little bit embarrassing, but it's not going to cause us a lot of grief. Whereas it's something like our Workday stuff, then that's a different requirement, right?
Let me jump in and jump. The thing that I guess you said, and shut up to the audiences, you worked at the bank for 10 years and they were behind. You would think FDIC or GLIBA would have forced them to keep up at a certain level, even for a small bank. So
I was just there for 2 years. They had grown. If you're small and you know, if you don't have a lot of money, there's things you do, but you don't get audited. You do get audited, but not by the high level regulators.
100%.
So once you hit like where you've got like $15 billion of managed assets, you know, then it's a different thing. You can't just say, well, we're privately held, right? It's like that doesn't play anymore. So their processes were very, very immature. So we had to really force things, and it was painful. It really was.
The weird thing, and a lot of people ask me, what's the pushback in cybersecurity? And I think you named some of them. When people been doing something a certain way and you come in and try to put controls and requirements on, people push back because they've been doing this way for 20 years. Nobody covering to audit them. So you have high-level people pushing. Chime in on that.
Well, it's a matter of talking to people. People just don't understand, right? And my thing was, it's like, you know, it's if you're just a small company, you don't have any money, it's no big deal. People are going to leave you alone. But once you become, you know, you past a certain dollar threshold, it's the law of the deepest pockets, right? If you mishandle something and you get owned, or there's a breach or something, someone's going to start, you know, coming after you, and then it's up to you to defend your position, right? You can't just say, you can't say, well, we're independently owned, et cetera, et cetera. They're going to say, hey, you're a bank on this level. You need to be, you know, you got to look like a Bank of America or following best practices, et cetera, et cetera. So that's just the reality of the matter. And but trying to mature the program, it's a leadership thing, right? You have to talk to people, because then when you start asking people with an IT or the business process owners, it's like, hey, what are you doing, right? Do you understand what the implications are if you're not doing the right things? But and a lot of it's they just don't know, haven't been told, or haven't been shown. But once you partner with them and say, listen, here's where people in security, right, we get a bad rap, because we write this policy, it's beautiful, we roll it up, and then we start stabbing people with it, right? My thing is like, this is what we've got to do. This is why we've got to do it, right? How can I partner with you, right? Let's a good football analogy would be, hey, it's like running the football 3 yards in a cloud of dust, right? I just want to be advancing that ball, and as long as you're encouraging with most of the business process owners, it pays off pretty well. There's those people that don't do what they're supposed to, but that's okay, because then on the other hand, we do pick up this policy, or we got a great big Thor hammer we can beat them with at times. But it's really just talking to people and them getting an understanding, and then just not being unreasonable. A lot of times security people will say, well, I've got this report, and you pop up and you've got all these risks, et cetera, et cetera. I want to report you. It's kind of like time out. These people are making money for the organization, right? There's bigger issues, right? Talk to the leadership and say, hey, we're kind of behind the 8 ball here, but when can we get to it? When do you guys have enough bandwidth in your workload to handle it? And we can accommodate you. So that's the way I tend to focus on it, and more often doing things with sorry, my dogs are making noise here. Just talking to people and being approachable is much better. It pays dividends than trying to beat people up over the head with policy.
No, you're right. And I think just for the audiences, I work for big companies. Usually big companies have a whole PMO office, right? So it's security working with the PMO office. They get the schedule. So I had them go ask, when can you get this done? When can you push it? So a lot of times, depending on the size of your organization, I usually work for big organizations that have a whole PMO office that handles that, which is project management, right? So they set up the policies, procedures, and a lot of times they get budgets from the higher up to get stuff done, right? Because everything he says costs money, and he brought up something specific. Is money's not infinite, so you might do something this year, next quarter, 2025, and even 2026. I've scheduled stuff out 2 years later because it's buying a new Cisco router that's $250,000, right? So that's where he said a give and take, and working with the other agencies, being a good steward, and basically don't be a security asshole. Be nice and work with other teams as part of that.
Yeah, there was something we were talking about earlier about
Jim, run it. I'm going to go hit the little boys' room, so I'm gonna let you and B2B run it. Go ahead, Jim. I'm gonna be right back. Go ahead and run.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, I can't remember what it was, but I still see the big and small companies, kind of what I've seen with GRC. It's kind of, I think I mentioned it was kind of like the stepchild. It didn't get enough love, or it fell in this little gray area. And then enterprise risk and IT risk, but lately it's been getting a lot more attention. Big companies, obviously, or financial fintech firms or banking, but a lot of people are taking it more seriously just because of I think just some of the breaches that have been happening. And people are starting to look, it's like, hey, what are you doing for your risk management? Can you defend your position? How are you tracking all of these things? And they're starting to be approached, at least from my experiences, is they're getting some tools and being expected to customize their workflows. So that's just my take on it. Whether they do it or not, that's another story.
Yeah, I can agree with you on that. I recently did a workshop where they were talking about how AI is actually affecting small businesses as well. And there was so many small businesses in there. Cybersecurity was the least thing on their mind. So I think that big businesses and there's small businesses with terabytes of data that's actually very valuable that could be susceptible to hackers or breaches. So I think that it's important for everybody to look into it, look into what options they can actually have. And then I know there's a lot of different programs out there for small businesses if they want to start taking their security into their own hands.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. One thing, PBO, like I think I mentioned this at an earlier discussion. It's I was doing healthcare at HHS. Don't throw things at me, please. But then I got into commercial consulting, and I was doing a lot of security assessments for different companies, healthcare entities. And I remember I got called into a large entity like Blue Cross Blue Shield or Kaiser Permanente, right? And they had like this really mature, chief risk officer and a really mature risk strategy. And they called me in and said, you know what? We've got these operations people, and we've got 54 silos of stuff out there. They're supposed to be doing triage on all the events. And I just don't believe these people. In other words, I just don't believe what they're telling me, right? For whatever reason. So my job was to come in and look at everything they were doing, from the SIEM for their logging. They had some one-off systems, what they were doing for their triage and analysis of all their security events. But they were very mature with their processes. And then I went to, so I'm saying, oh, healthcare is pretty good, right? And they got to, comply with, high trust, HIPAA, security, privacy rule, et cetera. But then I started, dealing with a lot of SMBs, the small to mid-tier. And it was just, this is probably about 7-8 years ago. And it was like an OMG moment. I said, this is the wild, wild west. It's like you've got your healthcare data, and these people literally, I said, your programs are so immature, your technical controls, but also from a risk management perspective. And I said, how am I going to help you, or why aren't you more mature? And they said, we have a bottom line, and we need to evaluate if we're going to treat patients or spend money on cybersecurity. That's really what it boiled down to.
Wow.
So you'd see, but even a lot of these systems with the small, you expect to see the rogue system or the orphan systems or all these rogue systems, but you still see them with very large entities as well. And it's always a political hot potato. And you find this old AS400 system or mainframe system, and it's like, we don't know, nobody wants to own it. They don't know exactly what it does, but it provides an input to something they badly need. And I'm like, oh my gosh, talk about a disaster happening.
Yeah, especially at large companies, you'll see, like you said, IBM, man, from AS400, shout out to that. So, and you see, but mainframe from a pure transaction standpoint, especially in hospitals and insurance companies, there's still a lot of it out there. Larry, that's me on LinkedIn right there. That's my government information. So if you can reach out to me on there if you like.
I kind of want to ask this. I heard a quote recently, and it said, revenue solves all known problems. Do you guys agree?
No. It solves a lot of problems, but not all of them.
No. I'll say it can create a lot more problems, and I'll give you a good example. It's like at the bank I was at. It's like when I kind of went in, it was a very small shop, and I knew they had lots of problems. And I came in as the principal cybersecurity architect, so I knew I had a lot of skills, and I had to really build a lot of things. And my thing is, like, I hired on with the CIO, and I said, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm going to do a programmatic assessment, right? Then I'm going to start kicking the tires and doing a technical controls assessment on all the controls we're supposed to have, look at the effectiveness and how we have them deployed, et cetera. But then I kind of went out on vacation. Then I reported aboard, and through the chief risk officer, they had hired their first ever CISO. And my first question to my new boss, the CIO, was, "Are you getting fired?" And he said, "No. 3 weeks later, he was gone. Right. I worked well with the CISO. I really did. My issue is he looked at, we had a lot of technology debt for the company our size, right? It's like, hey, we need a tool, HR will buy this and someone else will buy that, IT will buy this, and trying to support them, manage them, patch them. Yeah, it was just a nightmare. So my thing was, it's like, let's do a tools rationalization. Let's build all of these things. Let's build all of these processes. Let's determine what we need. And then from a security standpoint, let's look at our SIEM. Is it effective? Does it do what it needs to do? Our endpoints, et cetera, et cetera. And he came in and he didn't like things. A lot of times people, and I don't have anything against this, we know people, it's like, I like these vendors, or I like, I don't like Cisco. I want
Juniper.
I want Juniper, or I want Palo Alto, or I don't want, but we had some bad tools, but he just came in and he went to the board and got a lot of money. And then first of all, it's like, oh, okay, here's like $8 million or whatever. Okay, we don't have the people to spend the money, right? So we've got this money, we don't have the people. All right, so let's bring some people aboard, which creates some more headaches, etc. But then you're buying products and you don't have a plan, right? Let's build it and build the plan. That's like building a house. building a house where you're trying to live in it. It doesn't work too well. You got to pour the foundation. There's a process to follow, etc. So money doesn't solve all the problems. It can be good. It can be great if you can do a little graft and put it in your back pocket. But no, it can create a lot of other issues because we had, I figured that getting so much money put us back. In fact, I would talk to our auditing officer, our chief auditing officer, and I just made a flippant comment we had some type of event like a picnic or something, and I was talking about, oh, we're spending lots of money, and he said, we sure are, right? So that kind of puts you on
notice.
There you go. There you go.
I've been there.
So it can be bad if you got too much money and you already have too much technology debt, and you don't know exactly you don't have a plan for what you're going to do with it.
And I had the exact same experience he had when I worked at the state. The state gets a lot of discounts. So what happened is we had 4 seams at one place, one division, like one seam. So you get these products, but you don't have deep understanding of the products on some of those, right? So you have implement them. So I would go through, I'm like, dude, we got this that's doing the same thing as this, that's doing the same thing as that. But nobody really rolled their sleeves up and got super dirty, meaning I'm a SME at this and I understand it in and out. Then half the time, which I never really understood, is buy the consultant money if you're gonna get the product. Please get something to help you. But they would never quite do that, right? And I see a lot of companies doing that. So that's kind of one of my issues with that money. Time in on that, Jim.
Well, I was just going to say, yeah, it's I cannot tell you the number of times I've gone into a client, right? There must have been a big push for network DLP at one time. Check the block, right? And I look and it's like, oh, network DLP, what's it doing? Well, it's kind of in listening mode. We haven't really pushed policy on it yet. And you find you've got so many tools like that, it's like you've got layers and layers of tools that came up, and they're just not properly configured. So that's why I say, you got to have a process, and you got to build your controls and have a strategy for your risk, and do all the dirty work that's not necessarily the most fun. It's fun to take tools and deploy them. It's not so much to figure out, hardening policy and things like that.
Yeah, the weirdest thing I ever seen B2B is, I never forgot this. We needed a SME to figure this out, and I couldn't figure it out. You like this? It was a raw disk, I think, from Hewlett Packard. It was their Superdome. We had Oracle, so when you got a hotspot, it would move it to a different disk, right? So all your data wouldn't be in the same location. The problem was Oracle was moving it and the Superdome was moving it, so we couldn't figure why all these blocks was moving. It's like, then somebody said, "Oh, we got too much help, right? The disk is helping and the database is helping." So sometimes, like you said, you get products fighting each other. You don't know why, because you didn't properly configure them. So you're getting alerts and from this and alerts from that, and the SIM is throwing it and the database is throwing it. So sometimes you can have, I call it tool or product overload, because you don't understand the details of really getting all that set up. No, you're right, Peter, and that's real big. As I get older, company culture and behavior modification. Sometimes companies foster learning, foster you digging in, and some companies want you to spin it up and build a client, and you consult and get it done and getting out, right? So you have both of those cultures, and just kind of figuring them out and kind of figuring out which works best for you. And 2 is, a lot of times you're managing those other cultures and companies. So how do you control them to make sure they're doing the best work for you too, on both ends of that? Let's see. If anybody in the chat got any more questions, throw them in there. I think we kind of winding it down. It's been like an hour right there. You got anything else, B2B, while we chit-chat? Because I know you kind of sticking your toe into the security game.
Yeah, I'm really just trying to learn. I'm trying to make sure because I can talk all day about data engineering.
Yeah.
But when it comes to security, I'm trying to absorb as much as I can.
The data engineer part, where you get in there, which I'm doing, and I think it's coming into I'll send you the link. I think it's in a couple weeks.
Mhm.
GRC automation is coming in. I think that's where you're now with automation. What's hardening, like you said, what vulnerability scans, what compliance scans, a lot of that now is being automated, right? And I think your data engineering, scripting, like you said, understanding pipelines, all that kind of come in. Let's
Mhm.
see, what GRC and third-party risk tools are you using? I've used Rapid7, I've used LexisNexis. Coming from the GRC standpoint, it's weird, and I've used Archer at big clients. So it's either I'm using Archer, which is a gazillion dollars or $500,000, or I'm using spreadsheets. I
Yeah.
never really got it. I really never got it. I'm starting to look at ServiceNow GRC starting to get a lot of. I'm sure they're pricey, but I might see if I might reach out to them and see if I can start doing video stuff. What's that? What's that for
Well,
you, Jim? I've used Archer. Or I'm using spreadsheets. Go ahead.
we used we used the product when I was in the Marine Corps. We built out Exacta, TELUS Exacta. I think it's like Exacta 360 now. It was a really good tool. And then obviously you've got in a DoD, you've got EMAS, and you've got all of these other things, and CSAM or whatever, the Department of Justice systems, various degrees of crap or
Yeah.
some. I mean, they're okay, but I used a couple of very large clients because it's so much. I called it the Archer was like the arc site of GRC, right? Because it cost a lot of money and it took so much money, in tuning before you started getting some value, building out the workflows and stuff. But I liked the tool, but yeah, it just was like you needed a master's degree in it, and a lot of people don't have, especially your SMBs, they don't have that kind of budget or that kind of time. So just some other things I use, like just other tools. Oh gosh, I can't even think of any names. But
I
a
do
lot of
have.
times I just revert to, like you, to the old good old spreadsheet, and I just lay out the controls and I map them, and it works pretty damn well at times.
Yeah.
Can
Well,
I?
real quick before
Mm.
you chime in, I actually did a video, and I keep saying I'm gonna do more of that. Is everybody's using Office 365, so I was trying to move up to SharePoint list. Inside there, of course, you get Teams, planners included in that.
Yeah.
Inside SharePoint, you can improve stuff. So I was actually working on workflows where I can put a document with policies and procedures, have the CISO approve them, right? Then wrap
Yeah.
that up for assessments and stuff and audits and stuff. So I'm trying to really build a workflow because you get all those tools out the box.
Yeah.
So
You
then
you
Power
kid.
Automate with those
Yeah,
and just trying to come up with a workflow. Chime in on
yeah,
that.
you did like Planner and Power Automate, and didn't
Yeah.
you do like a little, like kind of like a NIST
Yep.
security controls,
Yep.
like a few
Yeah.
of them?
The crazy thing
Cool.
is, I had 3 CTOs reach out to me and ask me if it was a product. I'm like, nah, I just kind of scraped some stuff together. I didn't really build it out. So
Yeah.
it's funny. So that tells me people are looking for stuff like that. So which
Well,
So go ahead.
but and that was it. My company. It's funny because it's like, hey, I need a good GRC tool, and then it's like, well, let's wait because eventually we're going to go to ServiceNow, and then then it makes financial sense to add on, the GRC or whatever they renamed it to something else. Then that makes sense, and it integrates with your CMDB, etc.
Yeah.
But before I got there, the enterprise risk management people, is they bought a tool, and it was the biggest hunk of crap. It's called Resolver. And to me, they spent a lot of money building the GRC workflow, but it was horrible as far as IT risk. And, those two environments don't flow necessarily together very well. And every time you wanted to do something, oh, you had to buy this or buy that or buy that. It's like, look, I just want to like get my controls, and then I build it, right? Whether I need like FFIEC, PCI, all of these other things, it should be easy, right? The mapping should be done on the back end. It shouldn't be that hard. And then I start building workflow, assigning roles, etc. So as a small to mid-tier agency, that's what I guess what people are looking for, is they're looking for all of these things, these risk management things, the GRC functions, but they're kind of like wanting one person to do it and handle, everything, from a big picture, instead of having a team of people, handling all of these security controls and risks, etc.
That's true. Go ahead, B2B. Chime in
Yeah.
there, B2B.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, so how do you go about getting buy-in from leadership whenever you want to build a solution for one of their problems?
My thing is, and I cheat, and that's why I tell people I work for the feds. So the data I'm usually where the IRS says you shall do this, or if I'm doing FedRAMP, DOD says you shall do this, right? So it's not me telling you that, it's the federal or HIPAA, HSS says you got to do this, right? Yeah. So for me, that's why I kind of stand in space, because if we don't do it, we can't operate our business, right?
Yeah.
So from federal compliance, what's your thoughts on that, Jim?
No, I was just going to say that makes it easy. You make a business case, right? And so that's easy. It says thou shalt do it. It's a commandment, so no ifs, ands, or buts. But then what happens is then, people just, you need to do it, from an engineering mindset. You need to lay out requirements, right? What you're looking for. Just like, a lot of, in the large federal sectors, they'll put out requisitions. They actually spell it out. A lot of mid-tier companies don't, right? And that's how they get into trouble too with their third parties, right? Because you don't say, they kind of go to them and they don't say, hey, you will follow, this is our policy, here's our standards. So regardless of all this other stuff, you must follow and actually get the legal contract put into place. They just go out there, somebody beyond trust or whoever, they just throw a contract and it's like, sure, we'll sign that. That's like, oh, okay, what did you sign? Oh, they're responsible for nothing, they do nothing, etc. Yeah. So it's a matter of, doing the contracts and, all those other things.
And I think that's a hidden gem. I've been doing more, not currently, but I've been hanging out with lawyers, which I thought I never do, is looking at contracts, talking about flow down, talking about carve outs, talking about indemnification, right? And that's kind of what Jim's talking about. And I think that's really from a hidden gem in security, because it's really a procurement. They're now finally getting security in there, like Mike V said before. You need to have it checked out with security before we buy it, not the opposite way around, which I've seen that before. So once again, make sure those contracts are right, working with legal. Once again, indemnification, caps, flow down, who's responsible. If our third party gets us hacked, who's paying for that? Realistically, that's us, them. Can we sue them? Can they sue us? So what does that look like?
And for me, it was for me it was really easy, because then it's like our contracts and third party risk are basically the same office, and you put it together where they drive those things, and then cybersecurity, IT, your chief technology officer all get a say. Likewise, so does legal, with that contract. So it all comes together. Once we kind of put like contracts and third party risk and vendor management in the same bucket, it seemed to work a lot well. And because other than that, we were getting bypassed all the time. It's like, what did cybersecurity find out? Well, it just rolled in the door. We were told that, it had to be. Yeah. So hopefully avoid those situations.
But I think the Jim, and then I kind of glossed it. So only large company has legal departments. So most smaller companies, they outsource their legal. So now you're trying to get with a legal law firm a lot of times. What's your thoughts on that?
It depends. It depends. It's just like, if you're going to do finance and stuff or banking, you got to have it, right? You got to have that in-house. It's got to be done. So and likewise, there's somebody you can call and get involved. But yeah, if you're a real small shop, it's kind of tough. You got to wear multiple hats, and that's why the best cybersecurity people are the ones that just don't say, oh, okay, it's all about security. Is they got to look at a larger context and say it's really about, just like with HIPAA, they talk about the security and privacy rule, right? I'm sorry, but privacy supersedes, or security. It really does. So you got to get involved with all of these other things, to really be well-rounded, I believe.
No, agree. Question for you, Jim. Can you give an example of validating technical controls? I can jump in on that. What's your? I'll take it first. We validate our tech from technology. We use either Rapid7, Nexus, or Qualsys. Once again, I report to the IRS. Any of those scan will give you a IRS Pub 1075, a NIST, a HIPAA. So a lot of times, probably 30% of those are manually that you have to. Do you have a webcam? Is your stuff in cages? Is your stuff in conus? A lot of those are manual checks. What's your thoughts on that, Jim?
No, absolutely. Like we've got Nessus Tenable or whatever the latest flavor, cloud flavor is. So we'll do that. But you've got to use other control tools too, because not all of them are infallible, or some of them.
No.
We've got multiple layers of controls and scanning tools, etc. But likewise, it's when I define the security controls, is I put specific tests out there. Some of them can be used tools like Nessus, Tenable, etc. But some of them are very procedure, right? Are you doing ABC, right? You can validate those things.
Is B2B doing dynamic scans and static scans on code, right? Or is he using PMD for Java? What are you doing for those internal scans? What are you doing for fuzz tests? And do we have a board to go over, budgeting? That's real big in this, because a lot of companies said they could do stuff, but they didn't have any money. So now they want to say, are you budgeting new features in? So those are manual checks, right? So like you said, how do you test those? And
oh yeah, that's funny, because that was just such a glaring gap. It's our development staff. It's like, hey, what are you doing, right? Best practices, right? Code reviews, right? What kind of tools do we have there for doing SAST and DAST and IAS testing? What are we doing here? All right, what are we doing when we're getting stuff off of the GitHub and
or I'm sure B2B now, people were putting keys out into these hubs. It's like, oh, those are our security keys out there in public. Okay. How do we check for that? Now, shout out to GitHub. They scan for security keys because people were blaming them. So everybody said, hey, these keys are out here. You need to come and get your people's keys, right? So, but once again, how are you doing it internally? How are you checking that, right? And running through that from validation of your control. Because internal development is its own beast if you do that type of work. So how do you...
We moved off of doing infrastructure development out to, we moved over to Azure. So we're using, what is it, ADO. So and then we built up,
and then their TFS is pretty good for their
Azure. The Azure DevOps, so we built the workflow into that. And then, what you do is you do like different gate reviews. It's like, hey, when you're moving to this, it's, has this been done? You got scans, are they clean, etc. Or, are they below a certain score threshold, etc.
Another question: how do you validate people doing proper code reviews in GitHub or open source tools? So for me, those are two separate questions. HP Fortifies out there. There's a lot of things that have come out and give you best practice of coding. Part of that. Open source tools, we had to have our own policies. I just got into debate probably 3 years ago. Is we used to say if you're using open source tools, you have to buy a support for them, because if there's a security vulnerability inside Spring or one of the who's gonna fix it? If you wait for them to do a community, so how do you handle that too? Is you need to have an open source policy for open source code, because there's a number of ways to do it. You can scan it, you can say you can fix it, you can buy support. So we were doing it a number of different ways. What's your thoughts on that, Jim?
No, and we needed some tools, and we ended up licensing check marks, and we used it for everything as much as possible. Even from even if we had a repository that was being developed by a third party, before it came into our environment, we'd scan it to make sure it was met our specific security requirements.
Have you ever got pushback when you ask people to scan their stuff?
No, not really. No, as long as you provide a process and the tools. Yeah, if you're just going to leave people on their own, right? They're going to like look at you like you're crazy, or give you the middle finger, or something, or there's some other type of salute. But no, if you kind of build a process and you tell them what it's going to be, and you provide a tool and a methodology, and then we even for our development staff, we even worked with them and said, hey, we want to buy you training. We even got the chief technology officer to pay it so they can do secure coding training. I forgot what the subscription was, but it was available to them. So
yeah, and I think Microsoft is really pushing that inside there. I keep calling it TFS. That's the old name for it. I can't remember.
yeah, but why do we get so many unsecure systems?
I think, like you said, I think there's just a lot of technical debt, and two is probably kind of like B2B. I think you get young guys; they like to cowboy it up, man. There's no secure coding. They got out of college, they doing, and that's kind of one of the good and bad things. DoD always use old stuff because it's proven. The new guys like B2B, they want to use the newest software coding thing out there. I'm like, dude, that ain't got no security in it. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, see, that really surprised me because in the olden days, it's like I really wasn't a coder per se, but I would do like some COBOL or RPG, or I do assembler because it was like machine instructions to
that don't exist anymore. I'm that old. I've done assembler.
Assembler was great. You'd write it to improve efficiency of mainframe operations, but it was all. But once you got good code, you put it into your code repositories, reentrant code, you reused it, et cetera. But so it really surprised me. I haven't been coding for a long time. I started again recently, but other than doing some scripting. But I have my son-in-law who's a coder, writes mobile apps. And I was really just shocked because he's a developer. He really doesn't do any coding. He gets all of the software out of the GitHub and everywhere else. And it's like you're just like putting this stuff together. And that's the thing that kind of scares me. But once you get it, you're containerizing it. It's like, oh, okay, and replicating it. It's like, well, it should be good, but yeah, I guess I don't understand enough about the process. But we provide a lot of tools.
Yeah, and I think for me too, it's like you getting this. This could be three guys in the garage. You don't know where this came from. So that's what's me, and I used to get into just almost shouting match with young developers. I'm like, dude, who's validating this, man? Are you who? If it breaks, who gonna fix it? Do you own it? Then they all go no and shrug their shoulders. I was like, come on, young guys, we gotta do better. But real quick, shout out to Larry. Question: I'm not. Are you GRC or CAT? Now I'm working on my CISP. I have a Security Plus. I've just been doing this so long. I don't have any of that.
I've been CAP certified since 2007. Dating myself, but obviously it's now the CGRC, and I'm talking to a local academy over here that does tech stuff, and it looks like I'm going to be periodically teaching their. They're doing an immersive program, kind of like pen testing, but it's more, this is more ops blue team testing. So one of the things is is they're going to be paying for students to get their ISC square, the CGRC. So I'm probably going to be teaching that course in the near future.
That's cool. I taught for 10 years. I really enjoyed it. It took a lot of my time. I was like, I need to get certified, so I need to get focused on some of my certifications, especially the CISP. When I was out there looking for senior roles, I think if you don't have CGRC, CISA, CISP, I don't think you get past the scanner.
Can I ask this question real quick about if you're trying to get started? Do you need a certification to get into GRC or cybersecurity?
I'll go first. I say yes because it's flooded right now, and I think just because when I apply for stuff, it'd be like 300 people apply for it. So I think the scanners and HR is looking for certain certifications. If you don't have them, you're not gonna make it to the next round. Chime in on that, Larry. I'm sorry, Jim. I'm so tired.
Well, I
I'm
was going to
talking
say,
so yeah.
Yeah,
that's
Larry's name is up there. That's
I
why.
know. I'm tired. Go ahead, chime in on that, Jim.
Yeah, I was going to say, obviously the CISSP is like the gold
Yeah.
standard for the certifications, but the systems it's very well received,
Mhm.
especially in a financial sector.
Mhm.
But don't overlook the Security Plus. It's massively popular.
Mhm.
HR people, they look and it's like Security Plus. I would go for the Security Plus until you get your 5 years. Go with the CISSP,
Yeah.
etc. Now, do you need the CGRC or what is it, the C risk? Technically, no. If you can get a Security Plus, you can probably move your way in if you've got you can put down that you've got security controls, GRC type of experience. So it's typically not my perspective. It's not a hard and fast requirement. Um, but I think that the CGRC, that was called the CAP, and that was just a DoD term, right? And
Yeah.
it came from certification and accreditation, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
Which then became the ANA process, and the CAP, I forgot what it was, the Certified Authorizing Professional, which that's really DoD, DITSCAP, DIACAP stuff, right?
Love it.
So for years I was telling them, and I'd work on these ISC squared job task analysis and exam writing stuff, and I'd say, why don't you change this stuff, right? Nobody knows what a cap is, right?
Nice.
I said it's like with the C risk, it's like, well, oh, okay, risk, it's like I'm certified in risk, that makes sense. So I said, why don't you change the focus? And I'm so glad they changed that. I think a year or two ago, they
Yeah.
changed it to the CGRC. And they're also changing the job task analysis, where it's kind of morphed. It's actually been morphing away from the DoD to more, CIS NIST controls and
Yeah.
a more ISO 27000 series
Ooh.
perspective. So
Yeah.
yeah, I really like the direction it's heading. So I think if
I'm
you want to work, if you want to really get a job, and that's what you want to do with security controls, I'd say the C risk right now, just because it's been around, it's probably the better cert. But
mhm.
the CGRC is making up ground pretty quickly, I think.
Yeah, he said, I don't know if you can see the screen. He said, my career goal is CGRC, CISP, and PMP. I work in governance for the Fed, so the CGRC seems to make sense.
Yeah, it
The knowledge is good, but if you get the CISP, that's really gonna cover you. For me, I think it's gonna
well,
cover your seat because it's the gold standard.
CISSP, yeah, you've got the 5 year requirement though, where I think with the CGRC, you probably only got a 3 year
Yeah,
requirement,
you're
I
right. You're
believe. So,
correct. You're correct
so
on that.
so that'd be a good route to go. Also, I had the PMP, because it's like, just doing this stuff, DoD. It's like you understand how DoD contracts works. It's kind of like, hey, for first year on a contract, you're all fat, dumb, and happy, right? And then your second year, the government looks to gain efficiency, to go to an option year. So that means all the people wasting money and resource and breath, like they said, hey, we don't need a PMP,
Mhm.
but we still got to do projects. So I ended up getting a PMP. But my thing was I loved cybersecurity projects or even things with IT, right? But having a PMP, people would call me all the time on doing some agile development stuff, or and it's like, look, I don't build space shuttles, I don't build houses, right? I'm cybersecurity. So I kind of let that lapse a couple 3 years ago.
What the
But it's a good certification to have. It really is.
what's your thoughts on this? And I very rarely see this. You probably the only one of people. Most PMP have no idea what a cybersecurity project is. So they come and interview me. I tell them what to do, then they tell me to hurry up.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my only issue with PMP. I've never seen. I've worked with a few, but totally, I
Most
very rarely see PMP that really understands cybersecurity.
That's why when we stood up projects, right? Like say we were building out some operations, or we were standing up a SOC for a government entity or something, right? So you'd come in and you'd do the build out and you'd operate, and then you sit in meetings, and then you've got a project program manager, and they're kind of like, you're already operating, right? So the things would go to your security manager, incident response manager, et cetera, et
Mhm.
cetera. So your PMP would basically be a scheduler, right?
Yep.
So if you're looking to gain efficiency, who do you need? Do you need a person working on the front lines doing incident response or managing the SOC, et cetera, or do you need the guy doing the calendars, right? Okay, then they'll say, Jim, now you do the schedules, et cetera, and worry about the budget, et cetera.
The only thing I would put that PMP does, you're right, but from the front line, most of those guys grew up technology wise. Most of them guys couldn't communicate.
Yeah, well, that's part of the big plan. It's the communication plan, right? Yeah,
Right.
and
So PMP communicated better. So a
it
lot of times, so that's why they kept those people around.
but it depends though, right? Because like you said, I probably had most of my experiences were like that, but I have run into a couple three that were like gold because they said I'm a cybersecurity program manager and they knew their stuff. They weren't like hands-on technical,
Yeah.
but they dealt with the technology and they could speak it and they understood it, and they even I think a couple of them even had a CISSP, so they kind of understood it. So they're very valuable. So I was more the techie with the PMP stuff,
Yeah.
but likewise, I just got tired of people like calling me because it's like I'd say probably if you have a PMP and you're in IT or technology, it's going to be doing some type of agile DevOps type stuff, and I just got tired of all that stuff. I said, what does it? It's like you got CISSP and all these other things that say cybersecurity, and then why are you calling me? You want to know if I can do some type of agile development. So,
Because
but
this a lot, yeah. Because we know features pay the bills, man. So everybody try to get the features out, and they worry about securing them later. So, those bigger projects. That's what I saw. Let's see. Larry, if you got 5 years, I probably would think the CISP and the CGRC maybe be a little overlap. What's your thoughts on that, Larry? Since I think you got both of those or one of those. I'm sorry, Jim. I need to go to bed.
that's fine. I understand.
So yeah. So what's your thoughts on that? Do you think the CISP and CGRC is redundant?
I'd say if you're going to get the two, I don't think they're redundant, but if you're going to get the CISSP, get the C risk. It's kind of covers the same basis as the CGRC.
Yeah, and I think you could study the material in CGRC, but I don't think you need a CERN. I think he's right because I hope to go CISP, C risk, and the CIPP for privacy. So for me, I think that's an upcoming trifecta because privacy is getting super hot. So I would go CISP, like Jim said, hit the C risk, but I would go CIPP for those three for the privacy. You got anything in there before the billions? We just
Yeah, I think that you guys answered my question about the certifications. And this is more like based off of opinion, but I was just telling PPO that I think that I may make that transition from data engineering into cybersecurity. One of the biggest reasons why is because it's kind of everybody's kind of getting laid off right now, and then it may be a little bit more security working in GovTech, but more specifically in cybersecurity. I don't know if that's true or not, but I wanted to get you guys' opinion on it. Do you think it's more of a safe play to get into?
I'll chime in first. I think GovTech, especially the federal space, I always tell people tax money is infinite. So it seems to be if you're getting a good project. And two is they tend to lay off less, especially if you work for the government. Now they lay consultants off all day, but if you actually work for the government, I think you get a little. Now the pay is a little less too on some of those a lot of times. So what's your thoughts on that, Jim?
Yeah, it's funny because I left the DoD and my security clearances, my TSSCI behind, and I'm in a commercial space totally now. So, but yeah, anything in the field is hot right now. It really is. And just when my career progression is, I'm actually more coding and more into data science and stuff right now, just to increase my depth of understanding and. AI governance and all this other crap. It's like, why does it always change? Just when you feel comfortable, everything changes.
And I
Tech
was
is always evolving.
Yeah, and I tell people that's the bad thing about tech is if you catch something hot, you can ride it for 10 years, but if you miss that next wave, I know mainframe guys that are unemployed, so power builder guys, some
Oh,
stuff that used to be super hot that don't exist anymore. So
you know,
that continuous learning, especially I'm in my 50s, so it gets a little brutal sometimes.
well,
Chime in on that, Jimmy.
Well, I was going to say, what's funny is it's like, I look back like 15 years ago, it was kind of like, oh, every 3 to 5 years, there was a technology refresh. You had to update your skills and, et cetera, et cetera. Then it became 2 to 3 years. Then it's like every year. And it's like every day I wake up and I look at something, I'm like, what the heck is that? What the heck is that? But it still goes back to my very basics. And I grew up a mainframer and I dealt with all of those old Banyan Vines and Novell NetWare and all the other stuff. And I was a Microsoft admin and stuff. It's all basically the same thing. Once you break it down and decompose it into its basic components, it's input, process, output, right? You got stuff you want to process and mangle it and, etc. So I just kind of put things in its basic, components. What's the data? What's the value of these systems? Just as if I just say what is this system, and you probably did like I had similar experiences, when I was in a service or even afterwards. It's like you've got your traditional enterprise IT. We all understand they are servers, laptops, etc. But then you get into the internet of things, etc. But then it's like, hey, I was kind of fortunate where I worked on like nuclear power submarines, or you work in manufacturing and you're on shop floor networks of these things. Well, once you strip away all of this robotics and everything else, it's basically a computer, with an operating system processing data. And then, oh, we got a STIG or we've got a SIS or some type of benchmarks where we can harden these systems. But that's it.
Yeah. I wanted to add on to that part too. I had a conversation with one of the directors at MongoDB, the NoSQL database company, and he was telling me about how everything could change as far as the technology, the staff. The thing that's always going to remain is going to be the data.
Yeah.
And yeah, and what you just said there was just like it's exactly falls in line with the input, the processing, and the output.
Yeah. It's the Tudums principle. And people say, what's the Tudums principle, right? Everyone remember doing subnetting, right? And then it's like applying a subnet mask and all this stuff and understanding, binary and hexadecimal. It's really as simple as Tudums. Tudums 2 is 4. Tudums 4 is 8, etc. So.
No, that's true. Like you said, we talk about that all the time. Fundamentals are going to stay fundamentals of that networking, programming, databases, the new NoSQL, even blockchain, right? There's still similar transactions, locking. So all that stuff, select. So all that stuff is kind of transfers through time, like you said, those basic skills. And hopefully when we talk about stacking your skills, so once you learn something, you just need to learn a little more. Like you said, if you done VMs, unware, and hypervisor, you just move it to the cloud, right? So what does that mean in the cloud, and how does that operate? A lot of those fundamentals are still the same.
Yeah, and I've had so many people on the infrastructure side, it's kind of like, well, I'm here on the infrastructure side with Microsoft AD and all this other stuff. And it's like, okay, dude, we now got these clouds out there. We've got a small AWS presence, but we got this massive Azure M365 environment. We're not going to be paying for contractors and you. So you need to learn both, right? And, that sometimes, people just have to have a little bit of be told that they need to, professionally develop. And as far as certifications, they aren't the end all be all. I've got, several. I used it because I was I was a contractor, a defense contractor afterwards. And the one thing I learned pretty quickly, is like when a contract goes south or something else, or you're trying to compete, right? Oh, okay, I'm a CISSP today. Now I'm a cap tomorrow, or I'm an architect, etc. So it's nice to have those things. And HR people, bless their hearts, they're not the smartest people in the world. People write a requisition for them, and they say, this is what I'm looking for. You won't even get a look at if you don't have the certification or the specific skill or whatever the case is. So the more you can put down there, the broader, your experiences or certifications, I just think it opens a few more doors for you.
Yeah, especially in that 85-70 world, certain jobs have certain levels, and you need these certain certs to apply to those roles.
Oh, absolutely.
So that, bro. So I'm gonna let Jim, I'm gonna give you your last thoughts on this. I'm gonna shut. We've been going for 2 hours and I'm dozing out. So I'm gonna give you your last take, then I'm gonna go before the video. I appreciate you coming up, and I always come up, and I think I'm gonna do 151 maybe next week. But go ahead,
cool
and
deal. No, I just want to say thank you. I appreciate everything you do. It's like, man, I don't know where you get the energy to do these things or to host these things or the time to do it, because once I get home, when I got the dogs and everything else, it's like, yeah, you sit down and it's like, I'm kind of tired. Oh, do I tune in a PBO, or do I just sit here, have a beer, and fall asleep watching the game, right? So
you do a little both. A little both.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, thank you so much.
You're welcome. But you like me, you got experience, so it's just taking one and pulling off a couple slides and just start talking. But I appreciate you coming up, and I always come up. That makes it a lot easier on me. Appreciate you, buddy.
Thanks, sir.
You're welcome. Go ahead, before the billions. No, he's my guy.
Yes,
we're gonna do some collaborations. Chime on in there.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you having me up here, PBO. And I always just wanted to learn some new things. And sometimes I had to sit back and just listen. I can ask questions, but I realized, like, listening to you guys talk, I realized there's so many things I don't know already.
Yeah, but there's a lot of things you do. Don't sell yourself short. You got that whole application background, and we're gonna delve into that online and offline. But go ahead, keep going. I just want to make sure I throw that out for you.
Yeah. Oh, and also, PBO, I did take your advice. And I'm coming out with a video tomorrow about how I did apply for some GovTech roles.
Okay, that's the thing.
Yeah. So it's with the U.S. Navy though. So
that's cool.
Yeah, we will see how things work out with it. Haven't heard back from the recruiter yet, but yeah, I just wanted to kind of be proactive and put myself out there.
And two is do your and we'll do something together. Do your data engineering videos and your data engineering / SecOps, and you need to run those on LinkedIn. I get a lot of hits from recruiters. Half of them, like Jim said, is I think they're just scanning my resume. They're not looking deep into it, but I get pinged quite a few times.
Right. I don't know, man. I'm kind of nervous about putting the videos up on LinkedIn right now. Ever since that lady brought up my YouTube in the interview and me reading the article, and then I was like, oh man.
Well, you need to figure that out, because when a recruiter reach out to me and I apply, my LinkedIn goes up high and my YouTube views goes up high, because I cross post, so they're gonna look for you. I promise you, they gonna look for you. That's what recruiters do. They're gonna look for you.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's I have a lot of things I'm working on, and I appreciate your advice and in your channel for putting up this valuable information. It's always great to learn something new.
No, I appreciate it. Like I said, my man Jim R, we're gonna do some stuff, and I'm in the GRC study hall. You saw those guys up, so I try to give back, because I remember when I was that young guy trying to figure out what ATO was, and I was struggling. So I said I was gonna come into YouTube and give my time. And two, I'm old, I'm divorced, don't nobody want me, so that gives me some things to do my time. My grandkids now, they so cool now. They go, Granddaddy, can you cash app us some money? They don't even want to come see me. Just cash app them some money. But no, shout out. So that's my little give back. So we definitely gonna shout out to Space Tacos. Definitely part of the GRC Mafia, the GRC family. So come check us out tomorrow. We're gonna be in GRC study hall. You'll see it on LinkedIn. Everybody's posting it and liking it and all like it. So I usually try to get them an hour or two tomorrow, once again in the GRC study out. But yeah, I'm sure we're gonna do some stuff online and offline before the billions make things happen. Go out and check my man's channel out, doing some great things. Go ahead.
Send me a link. You said that's on LinkedIn.
Yeah, are we linked on LinkedIn? I got so many.
I don't think so. I can look you up though.
Yeah, look me up and I'll send you the GRC study house. Shout out to Space Tacos and Chris Whitlock. So I can ping me link up to me on LinkedIn and I'll get you that info. Like I said, I usually run the GRC study hall. I just usually just show up, but I can definitely see that information. They're sharing a lot on LinkedIn. I usually just ride on their coattails. There's your Team Team SC. Because long story short, we all on Gerald Ozier, big GRC on YouTube. So we kind of spun off of that family tree. So that shout out to my man Damon. Thanks for joining us. You got to check out the replay. That's cool. Let me do that. Can I click on? Can I click on it? Let me click on it.
Oh man, I screwed you up here. By God, I put a link.
That's fine. It won't let me link it. I'll figure it out. It won't let me link it, but I'll figure it out. I'll look up you there. Why can't I do it? Well, we'll figure that out. I want to appreciate everybody. Thanks for everybody for joining me. Thanks for people coming up. PBO's out. Everybody have a hump day tomorrow. And everybody have a happy 4th of July. I see everybody in the GRC study out tomorrow. Thanks.
Later.
All right. Later.